Hi everybody. I wanted to make a video about self-care and commitment to yourself, post-trauma, post-narcissistic relationship, whatever you want to call it. And I want to talk about why it's so difficult for people that emerge from sociopathic relationships to embrace the idea that they have to take care of themselves. And we hear that very often, like, if you tell somebody about this, they'll be like, well, you gotta take care of you, or you have to embrace yourself, and etc., etc. And in and of itself, that phrase, you have to take care of yourself, is very triggering. At least it is for me, because I know that if I think of myself as a person that puts themselves first or takes care of themselves, more often than not, it's when I hear the phrase, you have to put yourself first, right? That, for some reason, knocks the wind out of me. And I thought about why it is that knocks the wind out of me. And I've actually thought of the reason. First of all, for many years, I've been fighting a battle, right, to convince people that something was wrong with a narcissist in my life, and that I have to focus more on me. Or when I was like fighting for my own individuality, people would always say things like, "This is your mother," or "This is, I understand, but you're underneath her roof," and stuff like that. So people would basically inadvertently tell me, and this is societal gaslighting, that my prioritizing myself or me thinking about myself was in some way wrong because there was a dual message. There was a message that was irreconcilable. It was like, listen to this narcissist who's trying to rid you of yourself on the one hand, and on the other hand, now people are saying, okay, well, you have to think of yourself. It's almost as if the paradigm that I've embraced for all these years because of what people thought or what people said was wrong, right? It turned out to be wrong, but I turned out to be right in my assessment of the situation, that I have to fight for myself, that I have to make it more about me, etc. So it's a slap in the face for people to now tell me that you have to put yourself first. Because selfhood was denied for such a long time, and now to hear people, the same people, say, oh, well, I know you listened to us all those years, and, and basically went along with a person that was trying to stifle your individuality, but now you have to be an individual. It almost makes me want to slap people. That's one thing. And another thing is that putting myself first, or thinking of things in terms of putting myself first, makes me uneasy because I'm afraid of becoming a narcissist. And this is very, very common for the children of sociopaths. For them it's a zero-sum game wherein it's either you put yourself first or you put people first. It's almost like a me versus them dichotomy, And that confuses you in a lot of situations, because as soon as you start putting people first, you feel like you're betraying yourself, etc., etc. It's not a situation, a thought that is useful in life, because every situation is different. There are some situations where you have to take a back seat, and there are some situations where you do have to put yourself first. And and it's all situational. You can't create a broad kind of rule of thumb, because otherwise you'll always be confused and you'll always be feeling guilty. You'll feel like you're abandoning yourself, you're abandoning the people, etc., etc. So there's a lot of confusion there. And I thought of how people can resolve this problem in their minds, because on one level we understand, and it's been proven, and people tell us that we need to take care of ourselves, that self-care is like what insulates you from predatory people. And I think that that's very true. If you can practice day-to-day positive self-care, creates a different standard for how you treat yourself, you'll attract completely different people into your life, and people will respect you more. Because the reality is, people do not respect people that do not practice self-care, and you can you know there are so many different examples of that within my own life, and even observing people in workplace situations. It's always the person that doesn't take care of themselves that gets targeted for workplace mobbing. That's just standard stuff. So how can we construct kind of an, like a how can we frame this in a way that we would feel comfortable acting on this self-care? I was thinking about this today. And I was thinking about situations in, like, let's say you have a friend and you agree to meet this friend in in a certain location at 5 o'clock, and you stand them up. You just don't show up to your meeting. Think about how you, as a codependent person, would feel in that situation. Chances are you would feel very guilty. And even you would probably even feel guiltier if you stood up a narcissistic person because of the trauma bond. So you feel as though you not honoring this commitment is a reflection of how horrible a person you are. And you beat yourself up and you apologize to this friend. And you have this really, really horrible reaction to standing somebody up. And that's natural. Only with a codependent, they have no problem about standing themselves up. So, for example, let's say you made plans for 5 o'clock. You want to go somewhere, or you have a lesson, or you have something that needs to be done. You have no problem just not honoring that commitment. And that's the problem. That's the key. You have to see yourself as another person, as a friend. Because at bottom, there has been an idea constructed in your head that it's okay to not commit to yourself, but it's not okay not to commit to the other. And that's the big problem that you face. So if you frame it in terms of commitment, like, If you wake up in the morning and you have a certain amount of things that you need to accomplish, and you've allocated certain times to those things, you need to honor those commitments. And that's the only way that you can really practice self-love and self-care. You kind of build the scaffolding, some of you for the first time in your lives, for basically building that idea of commitment and to yourself. And if we think of it about it in terms of empathy and honor, what makes empaths or whatever people so amazing, in my opinion, is their conscientiousness. And if you can harness that conscientiousness in a way that it helps you, then you're on your way. So think of it in terms of, think of yourself as another person. And over time, the you that was and the you that is will fuse together. And you'll get used to honoring these commitments to yourself. That's something I thought of, because it's not so much a question of who's more important in your life, yourself or other people, as much as it is a question of being able to be conscientious towards yourself. And that's our main sickness, is that we're so conscientious towards other people, even people that are very damaging and very exploitative. And that's the source of the post-traumatic stress disorder that you have. It's the source is kind of like the rejection of being conscientious to yourself. You're no less valuable than anybody else. And if you're not comfortable with the idea of framing it like as if you're putting yourself first, think of it as being conscientious towards you. You know, that's so important. And you have to think of it in terms of your own honor. What's the honorable thing to do? Is it to honor your plans, or is it to throw them to the wind? You know, let me know what you think of this, because I've been struggling with this lately. I've been struggling with it makes you feel alone and as if you're being selfish whenever you exercise things that are personally for yourself. And that's a result of being shamed by the people around you for many years. That's a direct result of that, because people with healthy bonds, be it familial or in terms of spousal bonds, they don't feel guilty for doing things strictly for themselves. It's a non-issue, and it has to start becoming a non-issue for you if you ever want to get better, if you ever want to get out of this spiral that you're in. Because people are not going to thank you for not caretaking to yourself. People are not going to appreciate that. That's been proven in this situation, and nobody is going to, hug you when you get into another sociopathic bond. For one reason or the other, people are more inclined to be dismissive of codependents than they are of narcissists. I don't know why that is in society, but that's the case. So think about it in terms of being conscientious towards yourself, thinking of yourself as an entity other than yourself. and see what happens. Kisses.